Welcome you guys, my name is Kimani, and today I want to talk about some decks from El Gamo. It's a game my friend Alan created, and I've been working on the dev team for a few years, and this is actually some of the best decks that I want to keep and cherish. So I wanted to go ahead and showcase some of these lists, but also giving you some explanations. Well, not giving a tutorial, but definitely a deck profile and the most usefulness that deck profile can be. I wanted to talk about some cards and some interactions that can kind of help people get into the right mentality when thinking about playing the game and what to expect. Now, I will say these decks are from set 3 and higher, so if you're ready, let's get started. And also, these decks, these are really good decks, so be mindful of that. I'm going to go ahead and start with probably the weakest and go to the strongest. Now let's talk about the Star Swallower deck. This deck is actually pretty good. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's above, I wouldn't say that it's in the tier 1. The tier 1 decks I still think are like Aqua variations, maybe potentially some Earth stuff, but that might just be like tier 2. And then going into like mine stuff, that's actually pretty good as well. And combinations between them, but I think this deck is resilient because it is actually pretty, it's pretty aggressive. This deck is one that has won, usually when we first started playing this game, games took so long, but the quicker we got at it, it became so much faster. This deck is like the fastest deck to win with. If you value your time, I think you should go with this one. I think I won in like 5 minutes with this deck. It's very aggressive. So let's go into it. Now, first off, the Legendary Forest. This card is basically something for free. I think how do you pronounce this name? Miasma. I don't know how to pronounce that. Miasma. And then I'm going to go into a Scatter the Ashes. Now these cards are actually very good because these two can be basically played for free, and in tandem with this, they just ruin your opponent's strategy. So like I said, that the top strategies were Aqua and Mine. This card is a very good counter against those decks because it changes the attributes, or the types I should say, of your opponent's creatures to zombies. Or I should say undead, let me be specific. So it changes them to undead, which is a very good counter strategy, and burns any card or the player whenever a card leaves the field, or creature specifically. Going into the main deck, I'm playing 3 or 4 Star Swallower. I try to get different variations, but I only have these right here. But this is the main idea of the deck. I wanted to focus on making Star Swallower as good as he could possibly be. And this is, Star Swallower is a card that you can summon for 5 and then just destroy opponent's creature and then gain that creature's abilities. And it can't be a bound creature though. So primarily you're going to go after like rookies, cats, maybe a dogs, like their key cards. That's what you want to target with this card. So if they do have like a very good strategy going, you can either counteract it or just copy it. That's kind of the idea. Going into the other cards, I'm playing 2 of these. Falling Star Dragon. I really like this card in this deck just because it helps apply pressure and is very aggressive. And if you don't have Star Swallower, this just gives you so much more momentum. And if you're summoning out Star Swallower, you can just take your opponent's resources. I'm going to go back to just sharing all the cards because I don't want to spend too much time talking. Then going into Wandering Grim Reaper. For hand traps, I'm going to go into Wandering Cloak. I only want to play this at 1.
Yeah, thank you.
But usually you're going to use that if your opponent summons Rookie, or in the Aqua matchup if they summon a lot of human creatures, which Aqua has. For Chrono Dasher, this is to really help summon out cards and to really help, push for game. It's actually very good in this deck because you definitely, you win so quickly. That's the thing about this deck, is I can't stress it enough. To Rogue, this is kind of like a knight in chess. Rogue really helps you play around a lot of different things, and it can bounce itself back to hand if that ever needs to come up. Then one Psychic Skull Bouncer. This deck, I think one is enough. It's problematic enough that your opponent has to deal with it with a rookie, but I don't want to risk running too many because, you know, a Debilitate would just ruin this card. But it is actually very good with that 3, like that's a lot. 3 meter value. 4 rookie. Pretty self-explanatory. Then going into the support cards, 3 lanterns, 4 demon crest conduit. I'm not really familiar with pronouncing all these cards' names out loud, but the demon card, this is really good because you can just bounce your cards or your opponent's card back to the top of their deck at a low cost if they have a spirit card. So that is really good. And then you can just lock your opponent out. Going into the spells, I'm playing 4 Progressive Blades. I really do like this tech now more than ever. This is the OTK deck, so you're trying to win as quickly as possible, which means you don't really care about the next turn as long as you win this turn. And while this deck is not like super aggressive, like it's FTK, but it's very good, and you'd be surprised how quickly you can win. Especially with cards like Anti-Gravity. This card may be on the ban list if that ever comes out, because this lets you bounce any of your creatures on your field back to your hand. I don't know if it's bound card, non-bound. Yeah, you can bounce Conduit like this, activate this, send one onto the I can't even talk. Hypothetically, if your opponent does have like a bunch of spirits or something on the field, or even just one spirit, you can Conduit, return a card to the top of their deck, activate another one, activate another one, activate another one, and that's just going to be for 4 costs because of the discount, because they play spirits. Now they have 4 cards on the top of their deck, so you already know exactly what they're going to have, and you have cards to copy their abilities, as well as cards that are just going to like help you like gamble to just get more like damage on them. So this deck is like super fast. In Anti-Gravity, you can recycle these cards. You can recycle your Star Swallower, as well as even like a rookie too. That does come up, and that does have like some very lethal effects. So that is like extremely good. It's like playing so many different copies of really good cards. Early game, it's not that like valuable. You might want to cut this. I could see you cutting 2 of these for just something like direct block.
You play 2?
You want to get in. Then I'm going to go into Hoshi. This is basically, you know, you can get a Star Swallower back from the graveyard. Very self-explanatory. And then a Debilitate and Dungeon full clear. Now, like the best way to deal with this deck is to kind of just let them like overextend, because that's what the deck really wants. And you just punish them for it, and you have a pretty good chance of winning because of that. Now, going into the side deck is actually pretty simple. Talking about these 3 bounds. Let's see. So these are the bounds in the deck, I think, for this. So if you're playing this deck, these are the ones in your deck. I would put in an Angel just because it kind of does the same thing. It's a low cost, but it can burn as well as deal with other problematic issues, and it can be like defended from battle and protect itself. So it's kind of the same vein there. This just helps you get rid of some cards in your opponent's hand, graveyard, that you really otherwise wouldn't be able to. This card, if your opponent is not playing Aqua, if they're not playing like a strategy that's really dependent on their typing, then you might want to just consider playing the Evil Fairy. This can give you more bodies on board than just tokens, but it can help you push for a game faster, as opposed to waiting for your opponent to necessarily depend on something, or their strategy doesn't even really need to be that aggressive. This is where I would kind of come in and play more pressure, or apply more pressure, you know. So that's the thought process there. 2 cloaks just for the Aqua matchup, 1 rogue inside, then Ghostblade, Autumns, just for STD mainly, Direct Blast. You can side that out with Anti-Gravity, Debilitate, another full dungeon, full clear, because you are spending a lot of time summoning these Star Swallowers that cost 5. So there's going to be times where you just, you don't necessarily want to draw too many cards in this deck because you're not going to be able to use them. But even then, this helps you shut off some of your opponent's resources with the Strategist of Ruins. Then Kodama Spirit. I don't know if I would want to keep this in here. I think you could try to run both of these, but it does come up where your opponent does have like huge B6, like in the actual light deck, that this is just more convenient to just have and just ready to go, as opposed to just trying to find all these different ways to just get Star Swallower. If you don't have Star Swallower, you do have all these other removal options in that deck, so that's actually very good. But it's just another convenience, to be honest. And that's pretty much it for that. So that was my Star Swallower list. It's actually, I'd still say not like tier 1. Like, I would still say that it's like maybe tier 2, but it definitely has a lot of viability, especially if you play it right and you do be mindful of your opponent's resources and what they are likely to do. That way you stay ahead of your opponent and they don't really have much to do after that. It's very difficult. But that's basically it. Let's go to the next one. Right. Now this deck, I would say, is probably just like probably a good tier 1, maybe, or maybe tier I think this one, it's hard to say. Maybe this one is actually better. I think that one's actually, I think I'll go with this though. I'll say this one and this one are kind of the same, somewhat, but it depends. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the deck profile. Now the first deck is a light deck. I'm just going to go with the card count, the bounds, Dragon Blade, Prismatic Master, and 1,000 Chains. Now these cards are very good. I'm not going to go too in detail about these. And then next I'm going to go into the creatures for Sanctuary. If you're familiar with this deck, you know what it does. And then Guardian of the Ruins. Now I'm playing 4 of the Cursed Blade, or the Cursed Golden Blade. Next, 2 Rogue. Rogue is extremely important for this deck for removal because you're not using spells, so that's why you definitely depend on Rogue a little bit more than others. But in the first game, you should be fine with this 2. Angelic Gift at 2, and then of course 4 Rookie Adventurer, Dark World Necro, and then 1 Dark World Spirit Guide, and then 1 Moon, and 1 Dark World Veteran Lancer. Now, there's a lot of Dark World cards, but not too many cards to discard. That was a Yu-Gi-Oh joke. Anyway, going into the actual support creatures. I'm playing 4 Heavenly Messenger, MVP of the deck, 1 Hawkeye, just a Search Out Messenger, and then for the other light support cards, 3 Lantern. Going into somewhat negation, Walking Obelisk at 2, and then for the spells, of course, the Party Recruitment. Now, last but not least, you have Debilitate. Also, you have the Strategist of the Ruins at 2. Now, talking about this deck, what's really important if you're not familiar, basically this deck functions like this. You have 5 mana per turn. Rookie is a very good normal summon because you can basically destroy another Rookie and pop a cat. So you summon this, and then because you got that on the field, you can summon a Heavenly Messenger 3 less for the cost of 1. And because you summon that out, you can summon this out for free. So you can basically swarm your field with these and other resources like Heavenly Messenger because you get them out at a reduced cost. Now why this is really good is because Heavenly Messenger makes all the creatures with a mana cost or a meter cost of 2 or more that are light or heroic, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, light and heroic. They all gain 10 attack and 10 HP. So this card gets really huge. This card isn't effective because it's 1 meter, but the Golden Blade, he gets huge. And those are really the primary targets. Don't think you really need to do much more than that. But if you want to, you can also run in some other cards. But this is just my preference. As well as, I mean, that's basically the go-to strategy. Now, you use very little spells in this deck and very little actual bounds, because with party recruitment, you can basically discard a card for creature specifically, and then look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and then add all the creatures and cards that are bounds, remnants, spells. They are not added, so you can basically fill up your hand to really make that play a lot more, I guess, explosive. And that's why I run this card to help negate some cards. Lantern and Carrier is a very good card because you can play around certain obstacles that your opponent might throw out, and is very good in that regard. Now, the issue with this deck is that primarily when you have your board established with all these different creatures, it's kind of like they're really huge and they're very difficult to deal with. And a lot of removal cards that people might throw at you, they're just not going to be as effective. Now, for example, in the win matchup, if they're throwing out a Razor Edge, that's not going to harm any of these creatures. And if that's really their go-to strategy, it's not really going to do much. And Dog, they're still, they can block and defend some of these cards, but primarily that's not really going to help them that much either. So what this deck really loses to, Kodama Spirit, because if you get rid of these cards effectively, it's actually pretty, you can still do things, but you don't really have the resources, other than the bounds. And there's no way to really play around Kodama, because if they attack and then your opponent activates Kodama, they can just destroy the attacking creature and you draw a card. And they take a meter value damage, but that's really the only way to deal with that, as well as just getting rid of the Heavenlies on the field. Once this card is out of the game and removed, it's very difficult for this deck to really pose much of a threat, because you do have big beat sticks and you can just apply pressure, but without any real removal options, it does kind of if once you're aware of that, it does become kind of you have to really resort to just trying to attack your opponent as much as possible. There are times when you just don't have anything to do because your board is completely filled up, you're full. So this deck is more dependent on hand traps more so than anything else. This one helps enable some of these other cards like Heavenly Messenger, and this one is really good because it adds, this is one of the tech choices that I really like, because this Dark World Spirit Guide, you can banish it from your hand to basically get 6 mana per turn, and it's only really good once, and that's only if your opponent isn't playing banish removal and targeting you. But if you do have that, you can definitely get a lot of surprises on your opponent if they're not expecting it, because it is a hand trap. So if they're thinking you're going to do something like this, and then you activate this, and it completely disrupts their train of logic because they think you only have 5 mana that turn. So that's why this card is really good. This is just a good generic draw card. If your opponent activates or draw a card, you can get that draw and then discard. But you can't play dragons. So there's this one thing that's a caveat there. But just be mindful of that. Lancer, it is a hand trap that can come up because there are times where you just don't have anything you can do with your mana. So you might as well have the pay 5 already on standby, and you can use it as removal as well. Going into the side deck, the Double Blade Princess, this just helps play around certain things, and it gives you more options on the field to really just attack certain cards. And I'll put out these down cards again, and then one Sacred or Scatter to the Ashes. So even if you have resources on your field, you can still use this and drop it on your opponent and nuke their board. But I don't think it affects the bounds. Let me check. Target up to 5 creatures on the field. Those creatures get -3, yada yada yada, until the end of the next. Also their abilities with effects. Yeah, so it targets all of them and it negates their abilities. Very good. I'm going to go into the other cards. So for these two, and then 2 more Angelic Gifts. Rogue, Ghost Blade, Dungeon Deep Chimera. This card is just good because you don't have much to do on your turn, so just having this option there is actually pretty good. And for removal, I'm going for the Progressive Blades. It's very easy to slide these in, and you don't really have to worry about your mana that much anyway. Debilitates, because a problematic card for this deck could be something like Pinblade Pixie, because this card can attack directly if it's the lowest attacking card on the field. And because of that, it kind of plays around certain things. So if they have defensive options like this, that's very, it kind of just, it's hard to deal with. So that's why you have the debilitates in there primarily. And you do have rookies too, as well as some other cards to kind of help deal with that, like the rogues, but you don't really want to spend, 3 if your opponent's spending 2. So that's kind of the thought process there. And then going into the last one, this is just Autumn's Gray Sailors. This card is basically if your opponent has too many cards in their hand, you can burn them at the beginning of the main phase. This is usually against the STD deck because that deck gets so many cards and it's very difficult to actually punish them for that. So other than having, I can't remember what that card is, I'll show it later. And that's it. Alright, this next one is STD. Now that it's just an acronym for the first card that I really saw when I saw the game was Swordston Dragon. This card here was, I saw it and I was like, okay, I'm going with that strategy. And this deck has been consistently just winning and winning and winning, very, very consistently. I think it's only really I think it's only really lost. Now this might sound ridiculous, but out of all these years, maybe a dozen times, if that. It's very, very good. And I did spend a lot of time thinking about the strategy in the game, and I think it paid off, I guess. But I'm going to go ahead and share it now. Go ahead. Now this deck list here is actually, there's so much thought that's been going into this deck. It's so ridiculous. But let's go ahead and get started. 1 Angel, 1 Scatter the Ashes, 1 Chords, then the boss himself, STD, playing 4 copies. Next going into Paper Tigers, then 3 or 4 cats, I should say. Put this right here. 4 cats. Going into some other creatures. Of course, I gotta play the 4 Rookie Adventurers, 4 Strategists, 2 Rogue. I think this is good. I think it's like a staple number, to be honest. Playing the Dasher, as well as the Full Moon, and 1 Spirit Guide. Going into the support cards, it's very quick. Otherworldly Merchant, and then just 3 copies of Demon Crestwood. You don't want to clog your field, that's why I played 3. Going into some removal, 2 Progressive Blades, 2 Freezing Slash, 2 Debilitate, 2 Strategists, and as far as the last cards, which are the Remnant. Now, going into this deck, it's very fast, it's very aggressive. This is tier 1, definitely. The only thing that, if you're not familiar with this deck, I don't know what to say, but it's very much control. It's very base, control deck, because you have cards Rogue, who can bounce cards back to your opponent's hand, and then STD that can just destroy the cards in your opponent's hand, and then you draw so many cards. How many cards draw something? Draw, add a card to your hand, draw, 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 draw. And then these cards down here are basically just to get rid of problematic issues. Now the thing is, this deck is actually really good, but it doesn't have high attack creatures. So if there is a big threat, you're gonna have to just get rid of it with one of these cards. But you'll consistently be able to out their boss, monster, or creature. And you actually the way that you can play this deck is so dynamic because you have such control of when your opponent can even be able to use their balance if you just let them attack first. And typically, I would say like losing your stock as soon as possible is actually very good. So now you lost that stock, okay, now I can activate my down even faster. So sometimes I'll just let my opponent get rid of it because there's no point in having a bound in your hand if you can't use it. So I think that is just one of the things that makes this deck really good, is that it's okay if you lose a stock or 2 stocks. That'll just help you push for game sooner. I mean, this will just like obliterate your opponent's board. If your opponent activates this on you, you have chords to basically get back your STD and or all these other cards. And so I don't know if I want to go too in depth with all this stuff, because I feel like this is probably gonna eventually people are gonna catch on and just start copying it. But there is so many different things that you can do with this deck that's actually pretty incredible in certain matchups. So I'm gonna go into the side deck. I'm playing the Time Leap Hacker, Miasma, and I think this card is called the Exiled Swordmaster. These cards are really just in here because this is a good. These are just like going up against like good counter strategies. This one helps you play around certain obstacles that you might deal with, and it's actually very good. Especially more defensive decks, this can just help you obliterate them pretty much. And this one shuts off your opponent's resources, like the on-summon abilities, their actual like on-death abilities. It can affect this deck as well. So it's just mindful. You gotta be mindful when you use it, when you play it. Usually it's kind of when you're trying to anchor and just like, shut your opponent's resources off for good. Going into some other cards, these are all very generic cards, to be honest. Then nothing too crazy, to be honest. This just helps you deal with certain matchups, and it's a very generic negate ability. This one can help you deal with some zombies or ghosts, if I'm not mistaken, or demons and ghosts. And alongside with Miasma, like this can blow up the field. It's ridiculous. That's a ton of burn damage if it does come up, so you got to be mindful of that as well. Then going into the Lantern. Lantern's usually just if I want to play around certain like annoyances. You can just use this for turn like 2, shift the monster. You can use it, shift the monster, and then use the other ability, and then shift another monster, and then just have your creatures attack directly. Take a stock, and then just you have resources, plenty of resources to just recuperate whatever your opponent takes away. So it's not necessarily even like a bad thing if you don't have lights in your deck. So another demon, or I don't want to call it demon, I'm going to call it conduit. A conduit, I'm going to call it crested. I don't know, that doesn't sound too good. Conduit, I'm not going to call it a demon. But another copy of that just is very good. And to deal with like the light deck, I'm playing 2 Corrupted Bunny Witch. This card is very good because it's a coin toss, but it can get rid of their like support creatures, which when they don't have that, then the match becomes a lot harder for them. Other than that, like it's kind of like an uphill battle. Like if you played like in Yu-Gi-Oh against like a big blue eyes white dragon, it's just like a big like threat that you have to deal with. It's kind of an annoyance more so than anything else. You have to use all these other resources, but this kind of helps you like mitigate that in that instance. But it is a spirit, so it's kind of susceptible to conduit and your opponent's conduit. So that's kind of why I just want to put it in the side deck. I don't want to risk that, and I don't play any but like I think 1 spirit or 2 spirits, and those are just 2 cards. But these are the only spirits you play in this deck, and this is just going to be used in the hand. This one is just quickly, it's not even going to be able to be activated if your opponent has like conduit, so it's very safe. Next up, just some Walking Obelisk to negate if there is a problematic card. Debilitates as well as Kodama Spirits. Now, Kodama, you just can't deal with that card. But overall, I'd say this deck is actually very good. Even with the newer cards, it's still like very good. That's it for this deck list. I'm going to go into the next one. Alright, going into the next deck. This deck is actually very good because not too many people are even familiar with this type of strategy. So it catches a lot of people off guard in game 1, and then game 2 they just get completely obliterated. They have nothing they can do. So I don't know if this is one that should mainly see play, but it will help inspire some ideas. So I'll go ahead and showcase it. So this deck, I'm just gonna call it the Bloodless Brawler decklist. Prismatic Swordmaster and the Exiled Swordmaster. And then 1 Double Blade Princess. 4 copies of Bloodless Brawler. Then going into 4 copies of Cat, 1 Eternal Dragon, and then 1 Sword Tongue Dragon. Support cards, 1 Abyss Phantom. Next up, 1 Giant Field Slime. Then going to go into 4 copies of the Winds poem. Keep Reaching for the Stars. Then I'm playing 4 copies of the Halcyon Showdown. I'm not used to saying these cards' names out loud. And then Precious Memories at 2. And then 1 Springtime of Youth. Like a Might Guide type of move. Magical Light Vortex at 4. As well as 2 Advancing Fogs, 1 Hoshi. And then I'm playing 2 Dungeon Full Clear, as well as 2 Kodama Spirits. Now this deck is not something that most people will see coming. Because the whole purpose of this deck, and it may not even seem obvious now, is to basically not attack. This deck does not attack at all. Ever. And the whole function of this deck is to basically get out Bloodless Brawler as soon as possible. Fill your opponent's hands up, and then take away their resources. And you do play like a kind of grind game where you just don't attack. Now the genius behind this deck is that it takes away a lot of the strengths of other decks, inherently because of that. Now think about this. In this, there's a win condition where, like, how should I say this? Like, there's no deck out in this game, and you can have as many cards in your hand as possible. You don't have to discard them. This deck is all about helping your opponent as much as possible. Chrono Dasher, even though like you only play 4 beasts, this card, if they chain like Chrono Dasher and they keep drawing cards with Kitten on the field, like they still are not. They're drawing cards and you're decking them out faster. Not because decking out is like a win condition, but because it's like they run out of resources. They're depleted. Most decks are kind of dependent on their balance, and because you're not attacking, you're not giving them a way to like harm themselves. Because even with a card like Magical Vortex, you're going to heal them. You're going to banish whatever card that they probably depend on. So if it is a dog, you're going to banish a dog. If it is that Aqua support card, you're going to banish that. So they can't really deal damage. But if they want to, they can, but it's just going to make their life harder. Now, this deck is actually like really, really good. It's better than the STD deck. And this card here, the deck that, like the STD deck that I spent so much time working on and playing, like I played against myself one night and then like I was like so shocked. And then like it was so good. It's so good. An Eternal Dragon recycles itself and it restores your health. Sword Tongue Dragon goes after any problematic cards they might have in their hand. Even Halcyon Showdown, it lets you, for the cost of 1, it lets your opponent get a card from their deck to their hand to help set this card up as well, and at low cost, as well as the cat and other stuff. Like it really helps you move things through quickly. You exhaust your opponent, and these cards help you recycle cards in your graveyard. So you can basically recycle the recycle cards too, but they get banished after you use them. But you can recycle the recycle cards as well and really fill them up quickly with the Vortex as well as with this card here and with the Hoshi to just set yourself up, as well as with this card here to just get what you need as quickly as possible, take away your opponent's resources and give them like too many options that don't really do anything. And the cards that are defensive like this, and the cards that have restrictions where if you have less stock damage than your opponent, they don't work. And if they have cards that like Rookie and Cat, which just draw things, they are just drawing, they're just making it worse. So it turns the whole table upside down. Now you can recycle this one as well, the Wind Poems, and you have more stocks than your opponent because of that. And this card too, like it already shuts off the cards that they would probably be dependent on. And then, like, they're on summon abilities, on death abilities, they don't work. So that's why this card is actually in here. Basically, like, once your opponent has, like, exhausted most of their resources, and you can just basically summon out Sword Tongue Dragon, Prismatic Swordmaster, and then if you're only, like, your last stock, it's so exciting because they think they're winning. They think they win until they realize that was the whole point. You're not winning. And then, like, you never attack. And then, like, with this, you just banish all the cards in their graveyard, all the cards in their hand just get sent to the graveyard eventually, because if they have no more, like, turns and there's nothing more they can do, you can basically get all the cards you need back, and then, you know, banish all the cards on their hand or that were in their hand. Banish their whole deck, and then you can banish your whole deck too, and then you just look at them.
Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
There are some key cards that I want to talk about for this strategy in particular. This is Abyssal Phantom. I play 4, but in the side deck I want to have the other one because you don't really need to see it that game 1 that much. But your opponent's definitely going to go after this once they are familiar with the strategy. Next up, going into the bounds that I would play in the side deck. Blue Genesis, that, oh my god, this is where your opponent is just like, they're like, what do I do? Because this is like so frustrating. This is so frustrating. But the Blue Genesis card will balance everything else and you can use it. It's so messed up. You're not attacking with this card, so it gets sent back to their hand. You use this, you rip their hand, you discard cards, you add, or you discard cards, target whatever cards they do have on the field if they do summon something somehow, and then you can just draw more cards. And then, like, the most messed up part about this, I would play these bounds and side matchup. If you feel like you can win without taking out much, you don't have to. But you use those cards because you're going to be using... These cards are like... they don't get destroyed by spell abilities. So they're actually very good. As well as, you know, the Armored Wind Rider. And this actually can modulate his level at 2 costs, which is actually pretty synergistic with the rest of this deck. Another Eternal Dragon. It really helps you, like, you know, restore health and just make sure that you do have plenty of health. And that's just like just in case. Debilitates for the smaller creatures like Pixie, which can attack directly. Like this card can attack directly, and that can be a bit of an issue. So you don't want to have to, you know, lose directly because of that. But the real thing is the dungeon full clear. Now this is where it gets so messed up. Also, I'm playing the Kodama Spirits and the Lost Necromancer to help recycle the actual like Bloodless Brawlers. This is errata, by the way, but the Bloodless Brawlers that go in the graveyard, so you can basically, you know, get them back if your opponent does send them away. But if they banish them, you have cards like Swordmaster. If you see that they're playing that type of tech, that can just get them back from the banish to your hand, and you can just summon them right back. 4 dungeon full clears with this lineup, as well as just like obliterating your opponent's resources. They just obliterate them. And then the craziest part is that you can recycle these dungeon full clears. You can recycle them. So your opponent takes their stock away, it's only going to get worse from them. And then they keep trying and they're just getting nuke. Like, it just keeps happening. And then, like, your board is unfazed by it. And you're still giving your opponent all these resources. You're helping them out. You're giving them the cards they want to see. Even, like, their best cards, which are their bounds, are completely useless. And it makes them really have to reapproach how to even play this matchup. They just lose. And the thing is, if you want to go a step further, you can just let them attack you and just look at them. Like, okay, like, you can attack me. You just have to ask. And that's the thing about this deck. And then they'll realize, wow, you won on such a level that they don't even realize. And that's the thing that is actually pretty, like, psychological about this deck. Okay. Now you've seen the decks that were actually tier 2, tier 1, unbeatable, never had to win. Like, those decks are actually really good. The last deck here, this is the best of the best you could possibly play in this game. Now these cards here are not necessarily like tournament legal, because these cards here are just kind of part of the alpha stage of the game, which I don't know if Alan may use this for something else. I don't think so. But these are kind of like the alpha stage, and this is Sword Tongue Dragon. Now I'm going to move these cards along to the side. I think I will need some new cards over here for the stocks. And I'm going to showcase a bunch of cards that were involved in testing that were not necessarily, you're not going to see these cards because, you know, they were too good. Now this card here on summon was basically like a Raigeki. You could just summon it, nuke your opponent's board. On summon, destroy all non-support creatures your opponent controls. All of them. It doesn't matter if they're balanced, it's just, we're playing in like set 2 when this came out. It's very difficult to deal or play around this. So the only strategy that I could come up with was just to like, let your opponent hit you, let them, you know, take your stock, you know, they deal damage, they take your stock. And then before they have a chance to get out this card on you, you just summon out Sword Tongue Dragon and then just rip it out of their hand. That way you can play around it and not necessarily have to worry about it. But other than that, like, I don't think there would have been like a very good way to really deal with this. I'm playing the Revolutionary Soul. Up next, I will be taking these cards out. These are the kind of original, not that original, but the like first Sword Tongue Dragons that I saw and played with that got errated. And I wouldn't say that these cards are worse or better, but I do think they have different strengths, and I think that's actually something you can really make the most use out of. So it's interesting. The first deck I played, I used this card, and I'm showing it. With Sword Tongue Dragon, costs 5 as opposed to the cost 4. And then meter value 2, 20 attack, 40 HP. This has 30 HP. Mind Dragon. Pay 3. This has pay 4. Pay 3. You and your opponent discard 2 cards from their hand. If the player cannot discard exactly 2, send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard instead. This one can burn your opponent, and it's a cost 4, 4 and a 4. So there's like different like numbers, but essentially if you could find a way to get this out for free, that's gonna be good. The thing is, getting it out on the field, it takes your whole turn and has no unsummon ability, so that's kind of a big flaw. So this is usually only used to anchor your opponent's resources and push for game. That's primarily how it's used, and the 40 HP with this makes it a tank, and it can basically just go against any 30 or less. And if you want to, you can go against a 40-40, especially with some other cards, and even like a 60-40 if you really want. Another card that was errata was a Cosmic Spiral Dragon. Now I'm playing 4 copies of this because in set 2, this card was really good. So this card could get you a lot of cards, but it still has a high cost. But at the time, it definitely had some momentum, and especially against when like remnants were coming out in set 2. This was very good against mirror matches, as well as a good tech choice to just draw cards, as well as having a big, like, light body on the field to deal with some of the cards your opponent might throw your way. Tone Builder. Next up, I'm going to go into Rookie Adventurer, and then Spirit Guide. Now, next, this is going to be exciting. I don't know why Alan even made this card, but this is Black Lotus. And I'm just playing this as a one-of. He just gave it to me randomly. I didn't even know this was like a thing. But basically, it's not neutral artifact. Rest and sacrifice this card. Restore 3 mana. So, why not? You know, and I guess it's not technically illegal, but I don't know. Next, now this was like the first like really like busted card in this game's history. Like the devs know about this game or this card, but this is Poison, Fury, and Anger. This card here, when I first read this, I was like, what? I was like, what? This is a cost 3 Fire Spirit support creature, and it basically reads, pay 2, this creature does 20 damage to target creature your opponent controls. Activate this ability only once per turn. So you can have 2 of them on the field at the same time and use both, and you just shut your opponent off. You just shut them off. They can't do anything. They can't really play around that. They're so difficult. It's so difficult. It's so good. This card is so good. It's so good. Even now, I'm like, wow, that card is so good. And it is. And combine this with Rookie and Angel, like, you're just like blowing your opponent's field up. They have no way to even get started. So that's why that card is phenomenally well. And in the first iteration, I think I was using like a bunch of low-cost creatures in this to just attack your opponent and take away their resources. I think, for example, like a card like Staff of Moon, and then just going ham, just like 2 mana here, like 2 meter here, and like it was so good, so good. It's still too good. Next up, this is Paranoid Android. This card is very basic, but it says neutral mecha, continuous. All creatures in the field are mecha in addition to their other secondary types. Creatures are continuous its first time, and the creature you control destroys a creature your opponent controls for combat damage, and in turn, draw a card. Why is that good? I mean, if the mecha ability doesn't really matter because there's going to be some more mecha cards eventually, and maybe it will. This with the Rookie Adventurer and just being able to destroy a card, pop a card, draw a card, draw a card, draw a card, like you get too much advantage so quickly. I'm playing 1 Mind Charge, and then I'm playing 2 copies of They're All Coming True. Then I'm playing 3 copies of Early Stars just so I can get out Star Swallow and these big creatures. Especially with Mind Feed or Mind Charge, you can get them out very quickly and then push for game even faster. And with Mind Charge, you can basically use this card for free, because if you take a opponent's stock, which you probably will be doing, you can basically just attack, activate Mind Charge, and you have multiple of these because you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. This draws, this draws, this draws, this. These don't draw, but they actually give you what you need. Going into the other cards. Oh, and once you do draw all those cards, you'll have this setup ready. Next up, the Strategist of Ruins. This card did change, and the actual original one was better because there's no drawback. There's no drawback at all. Like, you just activate it, your opponent can play the game for you, and you get advantage. I'm playing 4 copies of Soul Guide. Soul Guide it's just the same, but the cost 2, the pay 2, reveal card from the top of your deck until you reveal a remnant card, not named Soul Guide, then add that remnant card to your hand, shuffle the other reveal cards into your deck. So that was before. So now it's like a cost 3, but when it was a cost 2, you could still get so much value and momentum from this one card that it seemed unfair. And it is. First and foremost, you want to see Soul Guide because that gives you a lot of different cards in your hands, and you can basically search, you get 2 remnants, and you're basically going to get the same 2, and that makes it pretty consistent. You could play more remnants, but I don't think you really need to. So if you see Soul Guide, you're just going to use that ability. The next turn, use the same thing. Help your opponent, like, take your stock away. That way, when you do see your bound, you can definitely play them. Now after that, if you have cards that you can discard with or something like that, you can make good use if you want to, with just like the regular game. But as far as right now with the Tome Builder, like this is a good 2-card combo that is very rare, to be honest. Because then you can immediately send as many of these to the graveyard as you want. You can send 4 and then draw 4, and primarily you're going to be looking for one of these targets here. They're coming all true. Now, because you're playing this, you don't need to worry about getting rid of this. You can just let your opponent get rid of that. Because usually by that point, they're just going to take your stock away, and it's going to be sent to the graveyard. And then, or you could just pay 3 and just draw a card if you want. You don't need to do that. But playing their all coming true, just blow up their board, and then you just proceed from there. While that seems like it's very good, it is. It's actually very difficult because especially if they're setting up and they're really looking at their hand and they're thinking about their decks and what type of strategies that they can do. So usually, like if you're going up against a deck like fire, they're going to be summoning out this, you're going to be going for stuff like this. It might even be pushing and being aggressive. Getting rid of their resources completely is actually very good, and it just helps further facilitate the things that you want. And there are other ways that you can use this card too that can just nuke your opponent's board at any point, which makes it completely like for them they have to play like conservatively, very conservative. So that makes it already extremely difficult to deal with. Another very common one was just activating Soul Guide and then going for Spiral Dragon. This will let you basically draw a card. And then on the next turn, you can search all the other Soul Guides and whatnot. If you wanted to, you get 2 of those for the cost, and you have 1 mana left. Or, because you would still draw a card too. Or what you could do is you could just search on your next turn, you draw, and then activate this ability, search 1, then you can activate this again to destroy it, draw a card. This is going to be Chain Link 2. You're going to draw another card, and then you're going to draw another card from Soul Guide. So already you're at 5 cards. Very self-explanatory, but very good nonetheless. Going into another good combo interaction with this deck. You really only want to see one of the androids because this card is not necessarily one that you get that much benefit from, because ideally you want to have at least 2 of these out on the field to really control the game. And android can clog. In early game, you do want to see Soul Guides and just get them out of your deck and get what you need faster. So you really only want to have 1 android because although you don't run too many spells, but when you do use the spells, you definitely want to be able to, go all out with them. And by all out, I do mean all out with them. But you can only use 3 of these per game. And in conjunction with this, not that. Sorry, my bad. Time Thief. In conjunction with Time Thief, you can just get a bunch of beaters on the field really quickly. So that's the real advantage there. You don't need to, you can't do that if your board is clogging. So the thing about this android is that you can use the ability of Tome Bender to get rid of the other copies of android. It's completely fine. And you do have android out in the field with basically your pawns. They're drawing cards, that's drawing cards. It's just you're getting advantage regardless. And it doesn't matter if you use the effect of Tome Builder, it's still a body on the field that can do some damage. And it has a pretty good, a 2 meter value. That's not bad. Going into some other card combos, I mean that's basically the gist of it. But there's some very like saucy things you can do. That's primarily just making full effect of some of these banish cards here. Would it be better to use a different bound card? Maybe. But if you're not familiar, this card basically lets your opponent, or all the creature abilities you have, cost 1. So you can get rid of your opponent's hand, blow up their field, use it with Angel to just burn your opponent, and like blow up everything. And that's basically what you want. So typically with your inboard is going to look something like this. You're going to have these cards out. If you may or may not have already like summoned this, but if you do, like it's just like you're pushing for game so much quicker. Or you might just hold it as like a last contingency plan if anything. And then you might have like a rookie or tone builder, something like that on the field too to help apply pressure. And then after that, like you still have hand traps and stuff like that. Not many, but you definitely have what you need. And that's basically the gist of the deck. It's very difficult to deal with. Very difficult. And the thing about this card here is like, a free, like you get 3 mana for free. Like, who's not going to do that? So if you wanted to, like, I guess you can just summon out Star Swallower, activate this for free, and then use this ability, get 3, and then discard 2, and then just take 2 from your opponent if you really wanted to. And there's like the tip of the iceberg. But that's basically it. Those are all the decks, and I guess extra decks. But thank you guys, and it's been a great time working on the game.